Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I have got another tag video for you. Today we're going to be talking about my favourite things about romance. This is from the Romance Goal book tag that was started by Diana from the Book Hunt. So thank you so much to Diana for starting this tag. But I want to thank Jen from the Book Refuge who actually tagged me in this. She actually created this video and tagged me at the beginning of August, and I finally have a break in my schedule so that I can do this tag as well. So it involves 14 questions in total that reveals my favourite things about romance. And so let's get stuck straight in with the very first question. Which romance trope will most likely lead to your perfect romance? Well, I mainly read mafia and dark romances, but I read some contemporary romances as well. And my favourite tropes are arranged marriage romances, which obviously fit perfectly with dark and mafia romances, but also fake dating. And I feel these two tropes are quite closely aligned, and it does dovetail into the second question as well. I will cover that off more shortly, but for now let's talk about fake dating and arranged marriage romances. So fake dating for me is my absolute favourite, and I also like to watch this trope in movies as well. One of the reasons I like it is just the fact that the couple get to spend so much time together, they get a lot of page time together, and I love the fact that they are faking a relationship, making other people think that they are together and in love with each other, and of course by acting that out it ultimately happens and they get their HEA. Now, a couple of my absolute favourites in this category are both ice hockey romances. One of them is of course The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I feel like this is a extremely popular story and a very famous fake dating story as well. In this one we're following Hannah Wells and Garrett Graham. Garrett is our ice hockey player, and Hannah ends up kind of fake dating Garrett because she has a crush on a football player, and Garrett convinces her that if she dates him as a very, very good ice hockey player, then she'll capture this guy's attention, and in return she's going to help Garrett with his schoolwork because he needs to improve his grades in order to stay in college. And so they kind of make this deal with one another to fake date, and of course this ends up being a sex education style of story as well, because Hannah needs help in the bedroom and Garrett is only too happy to help her out in that regard. So I absolutely love this one. Fantastic couple, and I just love seeing how their romance developed. The other one I've got is also an ice hockey romance. Like I said, this is The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer. In this one we were following Hazel and Rory, and these two have known each other since college, and now Rory is playing professional ice hockey and Hazel happens to be kind of on the medical team as a physiotherapist, and when her ex joins the team she kind of needs a bit of protection from him, and so Rory's only too happy to step in and pretend he's dating Hazel to keep her ex off her back. And again, I loved the banter between this couple, the time they spent together and how cute they were together, and just seeing how their relationship unfolded as we went through the story. Really, really fantastic read. The other one that I don't actually own but is also top of mind in this category is The Blind Spot by Candy Steiner, and the couple in this one is Clay and Gianna. Clay is a football player. He's just been kind of dumped by his long-term girlfriend and he's pretty heartbroken. Gianna is on the PR team and she gets assigned to Clay because, you know, he's starting to not perform too well in interviews and that sort of thing because he's become quite grumpy, and then they kind of start to fake date because Clay wants to make his ex-girlfriend jealous and she needs some help attracting another guy, and so she thinks by going out with Clay that will raise her popularity so this other guy will fancy her. And very similar to The Deal, this ends up being a bit of sex education as well because Gianna is a virgin and she wants Clay to give her some pointers in the bedroom so that when she finally does snag her guy she knows what she's doing. And so another great fake dating trope for sure. Now this does lead on to question 2. So what do you look forward to in a romance book that will make it a memorable one for you? And that for me follows this trope of this fake dating arranged marriage, and in particular I guess arranged marriage. I really like it when couples are in close proximity with one another, and they get a lot of page time together, right? I want to see them together, I want to see them interact with each other in different scenarios, and I want to see the banter between the couple, because I really want to get a sense of their kind of closeness, their attraction, their growing love for one another. And I think this is always delivered perfectly in a fake dating or an arranged marriage, because these are two people then that are usually brought together out of circumstance. They didn't necessarily choose to be together, but for whatever reason they are now having to be in a relationship, pretend to be in a relationship. So sometimes with arranged marriages, yes, they're enemies and they hate each other, but sometimes they kind of have to put on a bit of a front in public that they have married for love and not for some political gain. And so through this, then you get to see these characters really being together, living together, sharing the same space, and that is kind of what I just really love about a romance. Lots of page time for the couple. I don't like it when the couple spend a lot of time apart and they don't get a lot of page time together. So question 3, which romance with acts of service is your favourite? So for me, acts of service translate to sweet everyday gestures. It's the little things for me. It's the little things that I love about romances. It's not the grand gestures necessarily, although we'll come on to those later, but it's the small things. Now, there isn't one particular book that sticks out in my mind, but there is a recent read that I kind of want to mention, and this highlights this point about sweet everyday gestures, and that was actually Precious Hazard by Never Owl Tai. This is her latest book in her Perfectly Imperfect series. Now, this book isn't as good as the one before it, because this series has been getting better and better, and by the time we got to book 10 in particular, book 10 was absolutely fantastic. So book 11 was always going to be a hard act to follow, and I think it wasn't as good as books 9 and 10 in particular, but still a fantastic read. And one of the things I really loved about it was because Never Owl Tai had gone back to telling a much simpler story, a romance that kind of started to grow between this couple. It was kind of, even though it was an arranged marriage and they were together from the start, it was also a slow burn between them for them to finally admit their feelings for each other. But still, there was everyday gestures in here that really made me fall in love with both the hero and heroine. As an example, the hero in that particular story cooked for her every single day. He was very passionate about his Italian cooking, and he cooked her a meal every single day, even when she wouldn't eat it. And she had this thing where she refused to eat his food because he cooked it, and he didn't give up, and he would always leave food out for her, which I thought was really sweet. Also, this couple also ended up having to caretake for each other. At different points in the story, he got sick and she had to look after him, and she got injured and he had to look after her. But in particular, when he was sick, she really nursed him back to health. She was a terrible cook herself. He was a brilliant cook, but she was a terrible cook herself, but yet she painstakingly learned how to make soup, made sure that he was fed, made sure that he always had someone there looking after him, mopping his brow, changing his sheets, that sort of thing. And also she overcame her fear of fire, because she was really scared of flames and fire, and so she struggled to use the gas hob because she didn't want to turn it on and obviously see the flames. But for him, because he was sick and she wanted to cook him soup, she overcame that fear and did it for him. And it was even made better because he didn't know she'd done it. He assumed that it was his housekeeper that was doing it for him and didn't realise that she was doing it for him. So for me, that was also a really sweet gesture that was actually unvoiced, right? She didn't necessarily want any thanks or gratitude for it. She just did it for him because she wanted to get him better. And these are the types of acts of service that I particularly love in romances, and I think contribute to the overall romance for sure. Okay, so the next question, name a favourite hero or heroine in a romance who has character traits or did something specific that made you believe he or she is the perfect match for their love interest. So obviously there is a lot of books where I think they're a perfect match, but the one that really springs to mind is a recent read, and that is Till the Sun Dies by Amelia Finn, and this is book 2 in her Checkmate series. So this story very much focuses on Angelo and Lainey. Lainey is a very broken woman. In book 1 we learn that she has gone through a very specific trauma. She's very much been abused by a former boyfriend and made to do despicable things, and she's kind of rescued from this relationship at the end of book 1. But at the start of book 2 she is deeply depressed. She's contemplating unaliving herself and just really thinking that she doesn't have any worth and that her friends and family would be better off without her, and it's very dark and very difficult to see. But our hero Angelo, he has loved her for many years. He's always been her friend. Growing up, he was always there for her whenever she needed a ride, whenever she was out late, whenever she needed protection, he was always there for her. And he has stood by and watched her in this very difficult relationship, being there for her when needed, but not really interjecting, letting her make her own decisions. And he's absolutely there when it all falls apart. And he doesn't stop caring about her, doesn't stop doing small things to make her life better. He's the one that actually rescues her, and you know, he is desperate to bring her back out of her shell and bring her back to the former girl that he knew and fell in love with. And he's the one that kind of saves her from doing something bad to herself and does things to help her get over it and start to recover. One of the things he does is he actually buys an old vintage car that is in need of renovation, and he brings it to her, and he pretends like he's brought it to her because he doesn't have any room to store it himself, and kind of leaves it in her garage and is going to come and work on it. But really he's bought it for her, and it's really good for her mental health to have a reason to kind of leave her bedroom, leave the house, go into the garage and start building this car. And slowly but surely Angelo then starts to join her, and it's something that they can then do together. And when finally this car is finished and ready to go out on the road, they go on a road trip with a couple of other people as well, and this really kind of reinforces and cements her healing journey. So I absolutely think he was the perfect person for her, knew exactly what she needed, gave her the space that she needed, but was always there. Next one, name a romance with a relationship goals. It could be a side character. Well, I read mafia and dark romances, like I've said, so I'm not really sure that the stories that I really love are romance goals. So I had to think about this one long and hard, and the couple that kind of sprang to mind for me was Lachlan and Elena from Sweet Like Poison by Julia Wolfe. Now this one is book 3 in the Savage You series. The reason why I've kind of picked this one out to say that this is romance goals is because this couple go on to get married and have children, and Julia Wolfe has just started to write the Next Gen series with Elena and Lachlan's children, and we see the life that they've built for themselves. They own their ranch, they've got a very successful business, a very loving family, and I think this therefore is the classic relationship goals, right? Because who wouldn't want to meet the love of their life in college? It's a perfect age, right? You don't want to meet the love of your life too late. You want to be able to spend every single minute of your life with them. And the fact that they've built the life that they really, really wanted and have had the opportunity to build a really amazing family as well. So like I say, mainly I gravitate towards dark and mafia romances, but you can't really call those relationship goals in all reality, as much as I love them and I love to see those characters together. Okay, so the next question is, name your favourite romance with a memorable romantic gesture. So I absolutely love romantic gestures, and I love it when there's a big sweeping ending. And the one that actually stood out to me as an ending that I remember being kind of like perfect was The Bombshell Effect by Carla Sorensen. Now this is book 1 of her Washington Wolves series, I believe it is. It's a sports romance about this football team. Our heroine in this story, Ali, she actually ends up inheriting this football team from her father, who passes away, and she has a romance, and I think his name is Luke, but correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a while since I've read it and I didn't write his name down here, but he is the quarterback of the football team. They end up also being neighbours. He's a single dad, they're neighbours, they don't get off onto the right foot, but of course she ends up being his boss essentially. But they do start a relationship, and at first they kind of have to keep it fairly quiet because of, you know, the media and that sort of thing, but eventually they are together. Now there is a third act breakup, which means there has to be a third act resolution to this story, and I'm not going to spoil what the grand gesture was at the end, but it was perfect for me and I loved every single minute of reading about it. And I do remember in fact that book 3 in the series, which was The Marriage Effect, also had a really good kind of grand gesture ending as well that I also particularly enjoyed. So I think Carla Sorensen from memory does some really, really good grand gesture endings that I would recommend. Next question, and I've got a couple of examples for this one. Which couple do you know is in it for the long haul. So I've got one that's very tongue-in-cheek. This is Even If It Hurts by Sam Mariano. And I say this tongue-in-cheek because, again, like I say, I mainly read dark and mafia romances, and so obviously most of these characters get a HEA, but it's a dark and mafia romance, so anything could happen. These characters could get injured in the course of duty, or something other nefarious thing could happen to them. And so, very tongue-in-cheek, I'm gonna say Even If It Hurts by Sam Mariano, because this is a story about Dare and Aubrey. Dare is a complete and utter psychopath. He's actually a hero I don't care for too much. He's brilliantly written though. He is the ultimate villain in my eyes. He is so unhinged and psychopathic that I'm still not sure he wouldn't hurt the heroine Aubrey. But regardless, these two are in it for the long haul. They are never splitting up because Dare is never going to let Aubrey go. Even if she wanted to get away from him, there's absolutely no escape. So like I said, this is very tongue-in-cheek, but these two are definitely in it for the long haul, purely for the fact that Dare is completely obsessed with the heroine and he's never going to let her go. And the only way she is escaping him is if he unalives her, which is a strong possibility, I would say. A little bit more seriously, I want to refer back to an old classic I've talked about loads of times before. This is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I absolutely believe that one of the couples in this story, Melanie and Jared, are absolutely meant to be together forever. They are absolutely in it for the long haul because their love couldn't die. Their love lived on even when Melanie's body had been taken over by this alien called Wanda. She didn't disappear. She hung on with grim determination, and she ensured that Wanda fell in love with Jared too, so that she could find her way back to him. And ultimately, the love between not only Melanie and Jared, but Melanie and Wanda meant that ultimately Jared and Melanie were going to have a chance to be together again in the flesh. And after everything that this couple has been through, everything they've sacrificed for each other, there's no doubt in my mind that this couple will be together forever. They're definitely in it for the long haul. And then a really recent read, I haven't reviewed this one yet, it will be next week when you get my full thoughts on it, but I've literally just finished a book called The Scattered Bones by Nicole Scarano, and this one followed two characters who were absolutely in love with each other. I was left at the end of this book with absolutely no doubt that this couple would love each other forever. We were following Cade and Sella, and essentially this couple have a forbidden romance. He is a thief. He sneaks into her room and they begin a relationship with each other. But the thing is, she doesn't belong to herself. Her body belongs to a goddess, and she is going to be this goddess's next vessel. She is supposed to remain pure. And of course, she and Cade are going to fall in love with each other. They are going to end up getting married in secret, but they're going to be discovered. And of course, then there is going to be very severe consequences. And the consequences are that Cade is ended up being cut into pieces and his bones scattered around the world, and she manages to escape and then spends the rest of the book trying to find all of his missing pieces so she can put him back together. The reason why I say this couple is in it for the long haul is, like I said, because there was no doubt in my mind that this couple were in love and their love was eternal, and they promised that they would love each other even beyond death, even when they were nothing but dust, and boy did they hold up to that promise. So definitely a couple in it for the long haul. Okay, so next question. Name a book with a couple that has been together for a long time and is still working on a forever kind of HEA. So I don't tend to read too many books where the couple has been together for a long time. Most of the romances I read are couples that are just getting together, right? So we're ended on their HEA, assuming that they're going to be together forever. But I did do a video earlier this year about married couples. So these were couples that have been together maybe 10 years and they've now come to a point in their relationship where things need to progress, or they need to kind of solve an issue. But those romances weren't necessarily about couples who were struggling, but maybe just their relationship was starting to evolve in a new way. But I think the one that really stands out, I guess, as a couple who was a relationship in trouble was King of Greed by Anna Wong. This was a story of Dominic and Alexandra. They had met at college. passionately in love with one another and married for 10 years. The thing is, he had become so obsessed with providing for his wife, he'd become so focused on his business. He now has a very successful business, he's a billionaire, but he's so focused on work that he started to neglect his wife, and she cannot bear it anymore. She kind of gives him one final chance, and at the start of this book is their 10th wedding anniversary. He's supposed to be taking her away for the weekend where they're going to spend some time together, but he is late. And so this is the final straw for her, and she decides that she's going to leave him. And he is absolutely devastated and heartbroken, and it really kind of makes him reflect and think about what his life is really like. Now, he genuinely believed that he was doing everything for her. He was working all of the hours to provide for her, but he kind of lost sight of the fact that she should have been his priority. And of course, he realizes his mistake and spends the rest of this book groveling in order to get her back. So this may not directly answer this question. They're still working on a forever kind of HEA, but what I love to see in this is they did have problems, but they still loved each other. Despite everything that had happened between them, they were still madly in love with each other, extreme amount of chemistry still between them, and a lot of longing, and it just meant that they need to rethink their lives and how they wanted to be together. And obviously he had to do a lot of groveling, but they do end up with a HEA at the end, so we'll definitely recommend. Next up, we've got name a romance with stellar communication between the couple. Now, this is a really interesting question because one of my pet peeves about romances is miscommunication. I absolutely hate it, in particular when someone overhears something, takes it out of context, and doesn't ask the character exactly what they meant by that. So they just jump to an assumption and kind of leave, and then we get a third act breakup. So this is a really interesting one because when has there been good communication, right? We don't get that too often in romances because we often need miscommunication in order to give us a third act breakup. But there's two that kind of come to mind. One is a book I've read fairly recently, which is Born of Ice by Daisy Thorne. This is kind of a sports romance between a professional ice hockey player and a figure skater. Now, at the start of this book, this figure skater, she is extremely good at what she does. She is on track to win gold at the Olympic Games with her partner because she's a skating pair. But there is a serious accident. She's severely injured on the ice and she ends up paralysed from the waist down. As a result of this, she kind of loses everything. She loses her relationship, she loses her career, and she ends up going back to her hometown to kind of rehabilitate, but she is in an extremely dark place. She's very, very depressed, and so the hero of this story is enlisted to kind of come and live with her to get her out of her shell and to get her walking again and back on the ice. At first, this couple really don't want to be with each other. He's very resentful, he doesn't want to be there, he's kind of forced into it, and she really doesn't want any help, she just wants to be left alone. But they are both such strong characters, they have such great banter together, and over time he literally annoys her to the point where she starts to get better. And I think throughout this whole book they did have good communication because they just said it like how it was. And when it came to the point where they kind of had to reveal their dark secrets, share their sad stories, they also did that openly and really kind of accepted each other for who the other one was and really kind of listened to what they had to say, which I really did enjoy. Now, there was a third act conflict in this one, but it wasn't necessarily miscommunication. It was a classic. He thought he was going to sacrifice himself so that she could have happiness, but she wasn't going to stand for it. She knew him too well, and she was able to kind of confront him about it, and that's kind of what I really enjoyed about that book. So that is one that I think they had good communication between them. And the other one I want to mention is Come by Becca Jameson. I've spoken about this book a couple of times before. This is a BDSM romance. It's also an MMA fighter romance. And I just think this couple in here have great communication just because of the subject matter of this book. So in this one, we're following Katie and Rafe. Now, Rafe is an accountant by day, and by night he is a amateur MMA fighter. He trains in this gym and he kind of does amateur fights at weekends. He is also a dominant and is a member of a sex club. Now, he's part of the Fight Club, which is a group of 6 friends who all share the same hobby. So they're all part of this Fight Club, go to the same gym and are MMA amateurs, but they are also members of this sex club and are all dominant. In this first book, Katie meets Rafe because Katie's uncle actually owns a gym where he trains, and they end up having an encounter to start. They really like each other, very attracted to one another, and he asks her out for coffee. They go out on coffee and then they go out on a date, and he realizes he really likes her, so he has to tell her the truth about himself because, like I say, he is a dominant and this is a deal breaker for him. So he's like, I can't take our relationship any further until you know the truth about me, and I would love it if you would explore being my submissive. And so he takes her to the sex club and he gives her the opportunity to discover more about what this lifestyle is actually all about and what it means. He helps her and educates her, sends her to a friend who's going to talk her through everything that it means and introduce her to the lifestyle slowly in a very mature way, and really talks through everything. So really good kind of learning, very good communication throughout, stopping constantly to check that she's okay, getting feedback after they've done scenes to see if she's okay, what she liked, what she didn't like, so that they can really start to understand how they're going to make this relationship work between them and where their kind of boundaries lie and all of that good stuff. So like I said, a good example I think of a couple that needs communication in order to make their relationship work and just being really open and honest with each other about, you know, this dominant submissive relationship they've got between them. So next up, the question is, which romance has great intimate scenes that contribute to the growth of the couple? I've actually picked for this Twisted Emotions by Cora Riley, and this is book 2 in the Camorra Chronicles series. We are following Nino Falcone and Chiara Vitillo. These two are arranged in marriage to each other to kind of form an alliance between their mafia families. This is a mafia romance, I should say. And what we find out is that Chiara was abused by a family member and is very traumatized by her experience. On their wedding night, it's a very traditional Italian mafia family, and so on the wedding night they are supposed to obviously consummate their relationship, and then in the morning they will show the bloody sheets to the rest of the family because of course she is supposed to be virgin when she gets married and on her wedding night. The thing is, they do get married, but it's very clear to Nino that she is absolutely terrified, and it goes beyond just being terrified because of Nino's reputation, because he does have a very bad reputation. He is feared by many, but he's like, she's more terrified than she should be, and he very quickly figures out that something has happened to her and he encourages her to tell him the truth. So she tells him what's happened to her, and so he basically decides he's going to take revenge on her behalf and tortures the person who abused her when she was a child, and it's their blood that appears on the sheets the following morning at this wedding. So he then takes her back home to Las Vegas where they start to begin their relationship with each other, and I just love how Nino is so calm and patient with Chiara. Now at first they agree that maybe she's not ready for a sexual relationship, so he's like, that's fine, you know, I will find relief from someone else. But she really doesn't want him to do that, and they start to explore maybe how they can overcome her trauma in order to have a kind of full relationship with one another. And I just loved how Nino, like I say, is so patient with her, really helps her and guides her, gives her the control that she needs in order to feel safe and secure with him. And slowly but surely over time, she builds her confidence and trust in him until they're able to fully consummate their relationship. I think this is fantastic storytelling, and it felt really realistic, the amount of time and care that Cora Riley took to tell this story, and for Chiara to kind of start to heal from the trauma that she had and how Nino helped her. And of course through that and through that intimacy they start to fall in love with one another, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic story and definitely a great example for this particular question. Next up, we have name a romance with pining. It can be mutual or one-sided. So I've got a couple of examples for this. The first one is Broken by the Horde King by Zoe Draven. This is book 4 in the Horde Kings of Dakar series. Now this is my favourite romance in the Horde Kings of Dakar series, and one of the biggest reasons that I love this one so much is because of the pining. In this one we're following Kieran and Maeve, and these two were friends growing up. So they were childhood friends, and she very much developed a crush on him, and she kind of fell in love with him. And when they were sort of getting to the point where they were old enough to be together, he was about to go away to train to be a Horde King, she decided to make a move and publicly tell him how she felt. And he completely shuns her and breaks her heart, basically. In front of everyone, he basically turns her down and pushes her away. And she is left heartbroken for many years, and he goes away to do his warlord training, and he eventually comes back needing a healer in his clan, as it were, in his horde, and asks her to be his healer. And of course, she is still quite resentful, still very hurt by what he did to her, but she does agree to join his horde just for the season. And of course, then they are going to be in close proximity together, and their relationship is going to go from there. But it's a slow burn. It takes a lot of time for them to get back to the place where they're friends again, and that she can overlook what he did to her. But we discover that he's been pining for her just as much as she's been pining for him, because he realised that he did in fact make a mistake, but he did it for best of intentions. And so, like I said, the pining from this couple is absolutely palpable. You can feel it oozing off the page, and it's one of the primary reasons why this book works so well for me, why I loved it so much, and why it is my favourite in this series overall. Another one is Darkest Sins by Never Old Tie. This is book 9 in her Perfectly Imperfect series. This follows the story of Nira and Kai. Kai is an assassin. He gets injured one day. Nira is working in a veterinary clinic. She takes him there to patch him up, and they start this forbidden relationship because they are both from different mafia families. But they end up falling in love, and she becomes pregnant, and then Kai is actually captured by some enemies and disappears from her life for 4 years. But both of them absolutely miss each other terribly. They're madly in love. And so for me, this is a great example of pining, not because it's unrequited love, but because they are pining for each other, because they are not apart and they desperately want to be back together. And there's a brilliant part in this book which sums it up for me completely. So once Kai is taken, like I said, he's tortured as well. And here's what we hear from him. A boot connects with my forehead, snapping my head to the side. The next kick catches my ribs. I focus my gaze on the sky as more hits land all over my body, welcoming the pain, hoping it will be strong enough to overcome the ache in my heart. It's not. And I absolutely love that. I kind of like highlighted it and wrote it down and shared it on Instagram as well when I first read this book, because this basically says that the pain he was suffering from being apart from Nira was worse than being tortured, and he just wished that the pain would overwhelm it, but it never could. And so I think a great example of pining between a couple that love each other but just can't be together. And then finally, another one that I absolutely loved, this oozed pining between this couple on both sides, and that is Finding Forever by Amelia Finn. This is a story between Jimmy and Izzy. Jimmy and Izzy are lifelong childhood friends. They are best friends. They do everything together, and they are in love with each other from when they're children. The thing is, Jimmy doesn't believe that he can be with Izzy. Izzy's got an older brother who would probably be very angry with Jimmy if he went for his sister, and they're also really, really close. But they kind of promise each other that they're going to be each other's first, right? They're going to have the first kiss, be the first to have sex, and so on and so forth. But as they get older, neither of them can really fully admit their feelings for each other. They're both scared to lose their friendship by being in an actual relationship together. And Jimmy is training to be a world champion MMA fighter, and as a result he gets a lot of female attention, and so rumours go around that he is constantly with different women after every kind of fight. And so she very much believes that he's not waited for her, and so she doesn't wait for him. And then things really go from bad to worse for this couple, and the pining between them is palpable. Like I've said, it's so sad, it's really heartbreaking to read. I was crying throughout this book, but ultimately they do end up finding their way back to each other. It's brutal but absolutely beautiful at the same time, and would definitely recommend if you're looking for a pining style of romance. Okay, so next question. Which romance left you feeling a delicious tension and longing between characters? Well, this is a book that when I read it was so full of tension. It's one of the reasons that I absolutely love this one, and that is The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie. This is a mafia romance and book 1 in her Maid series. I thought this was fantastic. We're following Elena and Nicholas, and essentially they are obviously both part of mafia families. Elena's reputation has recently been ruined because she slept with a young man. She was obviously supposed to remain pure, so she was good enough to be arranged in marriage. And so although she's the eldest sister, she's been skipped over, and now her younger sister is arranged in marriage to Nicholas. But of course, Nicholas really wants Elena, isn't particularly interested in the sister, and Elena is very attracted to him as well, but they know they can't be together. But in the lead up to this wedding, they are forced to spend more and more time together because the families have regular kind of like dinners and social functions where they have to attend, and they're kind of together, and so their chemistry is electric. The tension between them oozes off the page, and they have a lot of really kind of quiet moments between them where they kind of stand next to each other at parties. He'll say a few words, she'll say a few words. There is a lot of communication that goes on without them even having to say anything, and they end up kind of having to walk away from each other to not draw attention to their growing attraction. Luckily, events unravel, which makes it possible for them to be together, but the longing and tension between this couple is palpable. It absolutely oozes off the page, and I absolutely loved it. So highly recommend. Just 2 more questions to go. So the next one is, name a romance in which either one protagonist or both together work on themselves or their relationship through therapy. Now I had to think about this long and hard because I don't actually remember too many romances I've read where either of the characters have actually been in therapy, and the only one that really springs to mind is a book that I've already mentioned, which is Till the Sun Dies by Amelia Finn. As I was saying earlier, the main heroine in this one, Lainey, she has been through a lot of trauma. She's been sexually abused by a previous partner, and as part of her rehabilitation, I was talking earlier about how Angelo really cared for Lainey and all the things that he was doing for her that really made me believe he was the perfect partner for her. But of course, she didn't get through her trauma just through his help alone, and she did in fact go to a therapist and have regular and intensive therapy to talk to somebody professionally about what had happened to her. And so I really liked the way that Amelia Finn did include a therapist in that book, because I think it was absolutely needed for what had happened to the heroine, for sure. Okay then, 14th and final question. Which romance has the most satisfying HEA for you as a reader? So I have 2 here that sprang to mind. In addition to The Grand Gesture that I mentioned earlier, which was by Carla Sorensen, one of the endings that I really loved was The Brit by Jodie Ellen Malpass. I think this was done really well. Now I can't exactly explain to you how this one ended because it was absolutely spoil this story, but needless to say, I think it was done really well and just absolutely loved it. Rose and Danny, who are the protagonists in this story, have been through a lot in their lives. It's pretty traumatic to read about, it's pretty dark, and they manage to find their way to each other, and together they fall in love and imagine a new life for themselves. And so how this book ends, how they get their HEA, and how we absolutely can see how they are going to get a permanent HEA together, I think was really well done. So absolutely loved. And the last one that I want to mention has a fantastic ending. The last couple of sentences are so perfect that I kind of like had to read them several times when I got to the end of this book, and that is The Takeover by T.L. Swan. And this is book 2 in the Miles High Club. It's the only one I've actually read in this particular series, but I absolutely loved it. And in this one we're following Tristan Miles, who is a billionaire and he owns kind of like this media sort of corporation, and Claire, who is a struggling single mum because her husband, who she loved very deeply and had a great life with, has recently passed away, and now she's trying to bring up her boys on her own, but also continue to run her husband's business, which is also a media company. And at the start of this book, Tristan knows that this company is failing and goes in to try and buy it out, so hence the takeover. Of course, Claire is going to be absolutely outraged and disgusted by his interest in her company, and she's going to adamantly tell him no, because she really wants to keep this company so that she can hand it over to her boys when they are old enough. But Tristan is absolutely captivated by Claire straight away. He is super attracted to her and is quite cheeky, because although she's turned him down in business, he does in fact ask her out on a date, and of course she is not going to be too impressed by this request either. It's like, who does this man think he is? He's just tried to buy her business and now he's asking her out on a date, and she obviously refuses. 6 months go by and they finally bump into each other again. They're both on a kind of a business at a conference in France, and they end up spending the week together and giving in to the chemistry between them and end up having a fling really for a few days until they go back to their regular life. Tristan is not content to leave it there though. He wants to see her again and be part of her life, and the events that unfold after this, when he finally meets her children, he starts to rethink his thoughts about what that might mean for them. But it's absolutely hilarious. So I think T.L. Swanner did a fantastic job here balancing kind of humour and this romance, and it was such great banter between this couple and I really love them together. But of course this is particularly focused on the end, and again I can't particularly tell you what the ending of this book, except to say that the way this ends, the way Tristan and Claire get together and how Tristan completely accepts this whole family into his life is absolutely fantastic. And the very last scene is a conversation that he's having with his brother, and just what he says about his life, the decisions that he's made and his dedication to his new family is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not going to give it away and read it out, but the last sentence of this book is a standout for sure. Highly memorable and would recommend. So there we go, we've come to the end of all those questions. I think this is going to actually turn out to be a fairly long video because there were 14 questions there, and some of which I had a lot to say, so I'll try and edit it as best as I can to keep it as short as possible. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much, I really do appreciate it. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and as always, if you have any books that you want to recommend, if you want to answer any of these questions for yourself and let me know your thoughts and views and some of your favourites in these categories, then please put those in the comments down below. And if you want to recommend a book to me, then I have a book recommendation form in my description box down below as well. Now of course the last thing for me to do is to tag some of the booktubers as well to keep this discussion going. I'm not going to say the names now, I'm going to look back to see who else has been tagged so people don't get duplicate tagged, but I'll tag them down in the description box as well. So with that, all that's left for me to do then is thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.